and I've had a really rough life. I've been chronically homeless. No. I'm sick and I need housing.
And I can honestly say that I believe that the people that are responsible for the homeless funding have been misappropriating the funding for years, and nobody's ever blown the whistle because nobody really cares to stand up for this city.
In the fading light of an October evening in 2025, New York City shelters groan under the weight of over 105,000 souls. Folks just like you and me, pushed to the brink by rents that swallow dreams whole and evictions that shatter families. That's a stark rise from last year. According to 2024 HUD data, the number of homeless people in the city has surged by up to 59% in just 1 year, pushing the total number bedding down overnight in the shelter system to over 89,000 by August 2025. Yet, in this grim, overcrowded sprawl, new shadows loom even sharper. Just days ago, on October 14th, health officials confirmed the first case of chikungunya right here in New York in Nassau County, a mosquito-borne fever that hits the vulnerable hardest, those 4,500 unsheltered souls laid bare in our parks and underpasses. Meanwhile, with the mayoral race barreling toward November 4, Zoran Mamdani holds a solid 13-point lead in the latest Quinnipiac poll. His progressive fire, free buses, city-run grocery stores, clashing against the surging independent resolve of Andrew Cuomo, a man who's tasted scandal but promises iron-fisted order. Cuomo's gaining ground, folks whisper in the diners, but what's the cost? Isn't it downright infuriating how our leaders drag these people's plight out like pawns in a power play, when sturdy homes and real care could rewrite the script? And here's the gut punch. Nearly 31,000 children, those bright-eyed kids with backpacks slung low, huddled in those dim-lit rooms as of October 10th, their laughter stifled by the echo of uncertainty. Over 140,000 students across the city call no place home, trading playgrounds for subway benches, their futures dimmed before they've even begun. What kind of city lets its youngest bear this burden? I wonder, doesn't it make you pause and ask, how much more can a child's spirit endure before it breaks? In the heart of America's wealthiest city, how does a metropolis with a massive budget let hundreds of thousands live in such precariousness? This crisis isn't just numbers on a ledger. It's a profound unraveling of homes lost, health frayed, and politics that too often fiddles while the streets smolder. In the pages ahead, we'll peel back the layers, the sheer scale and stubborn roots, the tangled ties to this feverish outbreak and the high-stakes showdown at City Hall. Because deep down, in this city that never sleeps, we owe it to each other to confront the hard truth. How long before we choose compassion over complacency? The homelessness crisis in New York is carving a deep gash in the heart of the city we all call home. As of mid-October 2025, more than 86,000 people, real folks, not just statistics, are crammed into shelters every night, a number that's jumped 12% just since last year. Dig a little deeper, and it hits hard. Nearly 24,000 single adults scraping by on their own, with over 17,000 men and 6,700 women. Then 57,500 inches families, including 30,941 kids who deserve playgrounds, not cots. And get this, over 140,000 school kids, 1 in 7, are crashing in shelters or doubled up spots, doing homework by flashlight. This mess traces back to the shanty towns of the Great Depression, but it exploded after COVID, surging 142% from 2022 lows, turning streets into survival zones while we hustle on by. But at its core, it's still those same old thorns, rents gobbling up paychecks, with just 2,000 affordable apartments added last year against a screaming need for 820,000. 15,000 households evicted, shoving families into the abyss, migrants filling 38% of beds, a number that's controversial as hell. Some say shut the gates, but in my book, that's just dodging the bullet while good people drown. Throw in the mental health grind, folks cycling from sidewalks to psych wards to jail with no real way out, and you've got an 11.5% yearly creep that's pure heartbreak. Domestic storms push 18,000 families in each year, spinning a vicious loop where broke turns to broken and broken to busted. So tell me, how long do we put up with this before demanding real change? We've got the cash in this town. Why act like it's some unbreakable curse? In those quiet moments, it weighs heavy on me. This isn't fate. It's a choice we keep making, and damn if it doesn't hurt. So what's really shoving tens of thousands onto the streets? Skyrocketing rents, a shortage of affordable housing, slash post-pandemic support policies, or the migrant surge, all fueling this storm. Can America's richest city keep ignoring the folks living on society's edges? And more to the point, who's taking the blame for this mess getting worse? This story isn't someone else's anymore. It's a mirror reflecting right back at us. Right now, with the chill of October settling in like an old friend's weary sigh, that first local chikungunya case in Nassau County hits like a gut punch reminder of how fragile our streets have become. Confirmed just yesterday, October 14th, a woman in her 60s felled by a mosquito's whisper, the first homegrown transmission in New York State since 2019. It's a stark warning for the 4,500 souls braving the unsheltered life in our city. Folks huddled in doorways or under bridges, their bodies already worn thin by relentless hunger and the gnaw of untreated ills, now face this feverish intruder that lingers in the joints like a bad debt. What if that next bite finds a kid from one of those 30,868 little ones crammed into shelters as of October 10th? In my years watching this town grind down the vulnerable, it breaks my heart to say it, but we've let our compassion curdle into neglect, pushing the unsheltered deeper into harm's way, where a bug's whim could spark a cascade of suffering we can't afford. Moreover, as polls shift like autumn winds, with Zohran Mamdani holding a double-digit edge over surging Andrew Cuomo just 26 days from the November 4th vote, this crisis begs for real reckoning. Mamdani's talk of free buses and city-run markets tugs at the progressive soul, promising a hand up for families teetering on eviction's edge. 15,000 cases last year alone. Yet Cuomo, that battle-scarred vet, whispers of tighter borders to stem the 38% migrant tide flooding our 89,568 shelter beds from August count. Isn't it high time we asked ourselves if our big-hearted policies are drowning the very folks we aim to save? In the quiet of these lengthening nights, I ponder, could this election finally forge a path out of the shadows, or are we just shuffling the deck on the same old heartbreak? Profound change demands we face it head-on before the fevers rise and the polls turn to dust. The shelter system in New York City, although a crucial component in providing refuge for the homeless, is still facing serious challenges. The temporary shelters are no longer able to meet the growing demand from city residents. As of August 2025, nearly 114,791 people were living in shelters, with more than 69% of them being families with children. Although New York is striving to expand support programs like the Subway Safety Plan, this program can only address a small part of the crisis. Since it started in 2023, more than 1,000 people have been moved from the subway system to stable housing. However, this number is still not large enough when you consider more than 350,000 people without stable housing.
It's around 3 o'clock.
Although the city has rolled out many initiatives, such as safe haven beds and stabilization beds, these temporary fixes can't yet replace the need for a long-term and sustainable housing strategy. The use of hotels as temporary shelters remains an urgent but controversial solution. This not only drives up costs, but also lacks long-term support services like education, employment, and healthcare, leaving the homeless in a state of instability. We must ask, are these efforts strong enough to create sustainable change? Or are we just temporarily treating the symptoms without touching the root causes? This is clearly a major challenge, not only for policymakers, but also for society as a whole. The shortage of affordable housing, combined with the lack of psychological and medical support services, are deep-rooted issues that need to be addressed if we truly want to improve the homelessness situation in New York. The homelessness crisis in New York City isn't just a problem for a few thousand folks without a roof over their heads. It's a storm slamming into the city's entire social, economic, and healthcare systems. With over 114,000 people packed into shelters in 2025 and hundreds of thousands more scraping by in unstable situations, these long-haul challenges aren't something you fix overnight. As sky-high housing costs stay the root cause behind most of this homelessness, the social welfare system is scrambling to keep up with the surging demand. One of the clearest fallout effects is public health. The reality of homeless people living in filthy spots without any real access to medical resources doesn't just spark diseases like chikungunya, it sets up the ideal setup for outbreaks to spread like wildfire. Especially when the government can't cough up enough hospital beds or basic care for them, those illnesses only dig in deeper, dumping an even heavier load on the public health system. The question at hand is, can New York keep sinking in this crisis without facing irreversible consequences? And will homelessness become a long shadow haunting the city, holding it back from moving forward? Another undermentioned fallout is the impact of homelessness on economic growth. The city, home to the nation's highest real estate values and cost of living, is grappling with a labor market that can't grow sustainably when a huge chunk of the population gets sidelined from the workforce pipeline. Homeless folks can't plug into the economy, and it only gets tougher when fixes like treatment, support services, or job training are all in short supply. How long can we keep looking the other way on this mess? When will we wake up to the fact that there can't be a thriving New York without tackling the homelessness crisis head on? With the sharp increase in the number of migrants arriving in New York in recent years, the city is facing unprecedented pressure on its public housing system and social welfare services. While some migrants come here seeking new opportunities, many of them end up homeless due to a lack of financial means to rent housing or access support services. They become part of the growing group of homeless people in the city, adding to the burden on shelters and the social support system. New York City has been and continues to try to provide shelter, but the continuous influx of migrants is overwhelming these facilities, thereby leaving local homeless individuals without adequate support. For instance, many migrants from Latin American countries cannot access programs like Housing First, an effective approach that helps homeless people secure stable housing first, followed by supportive services. They continue to live in harsh and deprived conditions, while transitioning from homelessness to stable housing remains a major challenge. The divide in the community becomes even more pronounced as some groups feel abandoned, while others see opportunities for change, creating tensions in support policies. The stories of Sarah and John are quintessential examples of the situations that many homeless people in New York are facing. The current social support system isn't strong enough to help them achieve a stable and sustainable life. This shows that the homelessness crisis isn't just a problem for the poor, but a common issue for the entire society, affecting the economy and the spirit of the whole community. The city government needs to roll out comprehensive and long-term policies, especially focusing on building affordable housing, developing job support programs, and providing mental health care services for the homeless. Only when these policies are implemented continuously and sustainably can we create a society where the homeless are no longer forgotten specters haunting the neighborhoods and parks. Moreover, building a stronger community means viewing the homelessness issue not as a backlog to be processed, but as an essential part of forging a fairer and more responsible society. When we tackle this problem at its root, not just by simply providing housing, but also by helping them reintegrate into society, we won't just change their lives, but the very fabric of the city itself. Conclusion: the homelessness crisis in New York City isn't just a social issue, it's a wake-up call for the entire nation. Over 114,000 people are living in shelters, with hundreds of thousands more without stable housing. This reality forces us to confront a painful question. How can a wealthy city like New York allow tens of thousands of people to fall into homelessness like this? Policies haven't been strong enough to combat the rising cost of living, the shortage of affordable housing, and the lack of long-term support services. Meanwhile, temporary programs like the Subway Safety Plan or projects to expand temporary beds, while having positive impacts, still aren't enough to address the root of the problem. The reality of homelessness, especially in central boroughs like Manhattan and Brooklyn, is becoming an inescapable part of daily life. Heartbreaking scenes of homeless folks living in tents, parks, and even subway stations are growing all too familiar. But if we look deeper, we see that these people aren't just struggling with a lack of housing. They are victims of a system that has failed to support society's most vulnerable. When candidates like Zohran Mamdani roll out progressive policies, such as providing free public services and housing support, it reflects a vision of a fairer society. However, are these policies strong enough to fundamentally change this situation? Or will we see half-hearted efforts once again, where homelessness keeps climbing, merely scratching the surface of a much deeper problem? We have to choose between driving real change or propping up a system that only treats the symptoms without touching the root causes of the issue. So, are we truly ready to face the reality that homelessness is just one piece of a bigger puzzle about inequality and social injustice? The answer isn't some short-term policy, it's a long-term commitment to genuine shifts in how we view and treat the poor and vulnerable in our society.